Hi everybody, this is Casey at Upcycled Island, and today I'm going to show you how to enlarge your crew neckline. On this shirt, the crew neckline is low enough, loose enough where it's comfortable for me. But I have some t-shirts where the crew neckline is too high and too tight on my neck, and it's uncomfortable, and I won't wear the shirt the way it is. So I'm going to change the neckline. Here's one that has a tight neckline, and I'm going to change this. And I'm going to first turn the shirt wrong side out. And then I'm going to cut that neck out of the shirt. So just find a place on the neckline and fold it over so you can start your cutting. And we have a little slit, and I'm just cutting as close to that reinforced area as possible. This is at the back of the shirt. And then you'll get to where the reinforced area leaves the neckline and goes across the shoulder. Just cut across that and continue to cut the neck out. And now you're at the front part of it where there's just stitching. So you want to cut close to that stitching. And this is the easy part. Just cut close to that stitching as uniformly as possible. And then we've gotten to the other part of where the reinforcement goes to the other shoulder seam. We're going to cut across that, and then we have our neckline out. Now this is going to be the hardest part. We have to undo all of this stitching. And this is a task that I usually do at night when I'm watching TV. So the next day I'll have this ready to sew my new neckline in. Okay, I picked a few stitches and I was able to get this apart. And once you do that, you can pick those stitches from the inside. So it's slow going. But just pull that apart and then pick those stitches. And you're going to do that all the way around where you have just stitching. When you get to the reinforced part, you can start with your pointed end of your puller, and you can get that seam started open. And if you're real careful, you can just rip that seam. On the reinforced portion till you get to where it curves, and then pick out those individual stitches. So that's one of the stitches. Let's go ahead and do all of that. Now I've got to the curve part, and I have to go stitch by stitch. Like I said, this is the most time-consuming and aggravating part of this whole process. Now we've got that reinforcement, the first line of stitching loose, and the second line of stitching we can just pick. You pull it apart and then just pick 2 or 3 stitches at a time. So go ahead and finish that. Okay, the hard part is over. The hard, aggravating, slow part is over. And this is what you should have, is the ribbing that was the crew neck of your shirt. And it should open like this. And you're not going to open it. You're going to leave it like it is. But that just to let you know you got all your threads. Okay, and then this one has a seam. And you can put your seam in the back or at a shoulder, at the shoulder seam area. I like to put mine in the back so I won't see it when I look in the mirror. Here's your shirt. Now we're going to divide the neck of the shirt into quarters. And first we need to find the front and back center of the shirt. And to do that, I line up the shoulder seams, and there is the center front of my shirt. I'm going to put a pin there. And I've got the pin. I'm going to secure the pin a little bit better. Okay, we're going to do the same thing to find the center back of the shirt. Line up those shoulder seams and then pull the back. And there's the center back. So put a pin for that. Just get your pin placed and then you can secure it better once you open it up. Now, that's not equal quarters. We want to find equal quarters. So what we're going to do is line up our center front and center back. And then we're going to pull this, and that's going to find the center side. The shoulder seams are not the center side. So we're going to mark the center side, and the same thing on this side. And this is just to find equal quarters. Okay, we've got those marked. Now we're going to do the same thing with the ribbing. I'm going to put my seam in the center back. So if I fold on that and fold this in half, there is my center front. And then I'll join the back seam in the center front and fold that in half. There's the side, center side. And the same thing over here. There's the other center of the side. So I now have the ribbing in equal quarters. Now we're going to pin right sides together. So my shirt is wrong side out. So I'm going to put my shirt right side out. And I'm going to take the center back and I'm going to pin it at the center back of the shirt. And then I'm going to pin the center front. Yep, got twisted there. Of the, where's my neckline? center front of the ribbing with the center front of the shirt and pin that, and do the same thing with the sides. Where those pins are, I'm going to line those up and pin them. Okay, and this is what it looks like. The ribbing is not as big as the opening for the neckline of the shirt, and that's exactly what we want. But we have it divided in equal quarters. What we're going to do is we're going to start, I usually start sewing at one of the shoulder areas just past it, and we're going to start sewing, and we're going to keep the needle down, and then we're going to stretch this so that the shirt and the ribbing are stretched to be the same, and then we're going to sew. We're going to go to the machine and do that. I'm going to show you what that looks like. I'm going to use a stretch stitch on my regular sewing machine. Hi, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and also the little bell next to the subscribe button. Push that also. That way you're subscribed to my YouTube channel, and by hitting the bell also, you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video, and you won't miss out. Okay, here we are at the machine. The foot I have on it is a, I don't know if this is considered a 1/4 inch, but it has the little lip down here, and I'm using that as the guide on the edge so I can stitch uniformly the same distance from the edge all the way. And I place the fabric, and I have the ribbing on the bottom and the shirt on top. And you see there's a lot of extra shirt. So what I'm going to do is stretch that. I'm going to start out by lowering my needle and taking a couple of stitches. So I've got my needle down. I'm going to keep my needle down whenever I stop. And I am pulling the shirt so it is even with the ribbing. And then I'm just going to stitch. And my needle is down when I stop. And I just line up the edges and stretch that fabric so it matches the ribbing. And I've gotten to the other pin. So I'm turning and twisting to get it all situated again. Pulling that so the fabric matches the ribbing. Stretching it. Stretching the ribbing so it matches. Okay. Make the pin and sew. Okay. So what we're doing is when we're pulling the ribbing stretching it so it matches the size of the fabric. We're almost to the second pin. Every time we stop, my needle is down. My machine is set up to do that. If you have a manual machine where you have to manually turn the wheel so the needle is down, you do that each time when you stop to manipulate your fabric. We're at the last quarter. And I'm just taking my time and lining up those edges so that the edge of the t-shirt is even with the edges of the ribbing. And it wants to pull away, so just take your time and stop as often as you have to situate the fabric. Almost done. Okay, we are finished sewing that. Now let's go back to the table and I'll show you what we've got and what we're going to do next. All right, here's what we got. This is what it looks like on the inside. There's the shirt, there's the ribbing. So this is what it looks like. What we have to do now is set that, is we're going to top stitch. And we're going to top stitch. See the seam allowance? We're going to put it to the bottom. Here's the top of the ribbing, the top of the neckline, and the seam allowance is right here underneath that seam. We're going to top stitch right along there. We're top stitching that seam allowance down. So we're going to take it to the machine and we're going to top stitch from the right side of the shirt here. Now I have a cover stitch machine that I can use, and it'll put a line of stitching on this side of the seam and a line of stitching above the seam. But for your benefit, we're just going to use a top stitch. I am going to top stitch, and I'm going to top stitch from the right side of the shirt. And to do that, I find turning the shirt wrong side out helps me to do that more efficiently. I am going to use what we call a stitch in the ditch foot. It has this edge that protrudes underneath the foot, And so I'm going to use this, excuse my hand, and then I'm going to use a straight stitch with a stitch length of 3, and then I'm going to move the needle over to the left because I'm going to use that stitch in the ditch guide on the ditch at the seam line here. I'm going to start near one of the shoulder seams, and I'm placing the seam where the ribbing and the shirt join with the seam allowance down on the shirt side, and have my needle over to the left, so it's going to stitch to the left of the ditch. It's going to stitch where that seam allowance is and stitch it down. So I'm going to take 2 or 3 stitches, keep my needle down, back stitch, and then I'm just going to sew making sure that that seam allowance is on the shirt side, and that's what I'm stitching. Okay, that's all there is to it. Let's go look and see what we got. Hi, I just want to remind you that you can get this shirt upcycle because once is not enough. And here's where you can find it. upcycled-island.creator-spring.com. They come in a variety of colors and styles. Here we are. This is what it looks like from this side. You can see the original stitching, and then you can see the top stitching. On the right side, you only see the top stitching. And it does 2 things. It makes your neckline look neater, and it holds the seam allowance down and keeps it from bulking up your neckline. And so now what we've done is just lowered that neckline so it is not going to be so tight up against my neck. When we took the ribbing apart and also took the reinforcing piece off of it, that allowed this to stretch, the ribbing to stretch more, to so it could stretch enough for the new neck size, for the enlarged neck size. And we'll press that and it'll look real nice. And there you go. Well, I want to thank you for watching. I'm hoping that this was helpful to you. I don't think that I'm the only person who thinks some of these crew necklines are a little too tight. So I hope that'll help you. That way you can use the same ribbing that was originally in the shirt. You just have the initial aggravation of getting all the stitches out, and then you can reapply it to the shirt. So there's no extra expense. You've already got the materials. I hope that's helpful, and I'll see you next time. Stay safe.